Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to dive into the California marketplace where they're laying off some employees, as well as some Emerald Triangle growers information from a recent event. Kind of talks about wholesale pricing, demand for flower, the vaping illness, and some brands that are emerging. On the line with us is Dan Kimmis of Good CBD Products, who is in California.
Oh, yeah. I'm roaming around. I'm in West Hollywood today, Chronic. I'm having fun.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you can check out Lowell's Cannabis Cafe and report back.
Parked 2 blocks away this morning, my brother. Just waiting for him to open.
All right. So just briefly touching on some topics that we've talked about is the recent layoffs in the industry. So Canopy is downsizing their Latin American workforce, talking about how the region is struggling to generate revenue. Which right off the bat is interesting because that's an opportunity for you to utilize inexpensive labor. I don't know if it's generating revenue per se, but they should be providing you with the ingredients to create brands to export and generate revenue.
Well, only if you can import and export it there, sir.
Right. So what this article is saying is that one of the largest canopy companies in the world, Canopy Growth, they're restructuring its overseas operations. They're laying off 15% of their workforce in Latin America, saying that they're reflecting the slow pace at which revenue generating opportunities and regulatory structures are evolving in the region. So again, like blaming the slow structure of the region, I don't know if that means they can't export it, but they should be able to still utilize the inexpensive labor force.
Well, those volumes, I think, are going to come from being able to import and export. I see North America and Europe as the big consumers, right? So to me, it would make sense that until those barriers come down, that workforce doesn't have quite as much to do.
Sure. Yeah, Germany with 70 million people that have access for insurance. So once insurance is involved, then prices don't really matter. They do in California, though. There's 2 more layoffs. So Canacraft and Grupo both told that the Marijuana Business Daily that they are undertaking cost-saving initiatives as a result of financial challenges, which along with previous downsizing disclosures by other cannabis firms might suggest larger underlying financial issues for the industry as a whole. So what that means is 16% of Canacraft and 35% of Grupo laying off its employees. So this article says, a quote, when you're in a situation like that, there's only a couple of moves that you can pull, adding that if traditional banking services were widely available to the cannabis industry, companies could avoid layoffs by quickly obtaining a business loan. Currently, traditional lenders are taking a wait-and-see approach after the U.S. House passed the Safe Banking Act, but banks and other financial institutions are showing growing interest in the cannabis industry. As signs suggest, the Senate could pass a measure before the end of the year. For its part, Canacraft said in a statement its layoffs were indicative of a short-term obstacle.
Yes, I'm just a contrarian this morning, Chronic. To me, it makes sense. If I had extra labor that I was trying to figure out what to have them do, I'd feel bad, but you'd have to lay them off, right? And if the rules and regulations and rollout have been slow and you overstaffed, cut those costs as soon as you recognize those costs. Sooner better. But the moment you say to yourself, oh my gosh, we're being inefficient, cut those costs.
There must be something to do with the inability to export it, because I would assume that a Canadian-based company would have their labor force in Latin America continue to grow. They can have flash frozen product and throw it in a silo, just like traditional agriculture.
Even those California companies, again, you overstaff. Okay. Be honest with yourself. And at some point, assess your business aggressively.
But with first mover advantages, if you're publicly traded, I think you have a fiduciary duty to utilize all of your assets and not have them be idle. There should be silos. There should be a continued business plan to move forward, not having just products hanging out because they can degrade over time. But with flash frozen and other opportunities, I'm not sure why they're waiting. There must be some regulations and a business reason for that, I'm going to assume. I mean, if they're not going to export or do anything with it, it gives California companies an opportunity to, try and get their brands out there. There's an Emerald Triangle grower show that showed confidence in the market's health, but there's also challenges ahead. So there was an event down there. Basically, they kind of aggregated some of the consensus down there and said that the wholesale market has remained around $900 to $1,400 a pound, which in some cases is hundreds of dollars higher than it was in 2018. I haven't paid more than $500 in a couple of years. So that must be some either really dank cannabis, or those guys just haven't realized what the wholesale price has done in regulated markets.
I say go out of your area, do your research, do your studying, put people boots on the ground like we do. I think it has value. I think you learn a lot when you go find out what other people have done, even if your rules are a little different, even if your situation is a little different. To me, the data that comes from looking at some of these other approaches to business is how you save yourself time.
You can look at black market prices in Philly at around 7,000 per pound, New York at 9,000 a pound, and so if your wholesale in a regulated market is 1,400 a pound, that's a lot. It's got to come down and meet the retail market of Oregon at $40 an ounce. They're going to have to compete with $600-700 pounds at the wholesale level. But there was another takeaway, I guess, that demand for Emerald Triangle flower and other products has improved steadily. So maybe it is about quality and consistency and just some of these OG growers. Something else to note is that the vaping illness hasn't damaged the overall bottom line for some of these cannabis businesses. There's a couple of growers around there. Some distributors also said that they're expecting a seasonal downturn in product availability and within another few months, which is standard since a lot of California cannabis market remains based on outdoor grow cannabis. I would think it would be the opposite. There tends to be a huge glut right after harvest season, but maybe that's the timing between harvest and availability. One other takeaway is that brands still have room to emerge. There's some, Curaleaf. They've been buying up companies for $800-900 million, almost billion-dollar valuations. So there is some market volatility in the region. Several growers. So in addition to market volatility, there's some remaining supply chain issues. Significant supply chain kinks still exist, and some criminal gang activity because of the cash. Apparently, there's a growing number of armed robberies. But supply chain is interesting. I've had a really terrible video I did about 6 months ago, really early on, where I was just reading the article like book on tape, and it's about drop shipping. I just got an email this morning asking about drop shipping. California is probably the only state where you might be able to try to implement something where you have delivery services, but to get a warehouse and aggregate all that for drop shipping, I don't know. But ultimately, supply chain issues exist. You're trying to get product from Redding to San Diego or across the mountains. There needs to be drop shipping. There needs to be opportunities to scale and expand and make your business more efficient.
I've got a groovy hookup tomorrow with somebody who sold a dispensary for 8 figures to one of the large players. We're going to get behind the scenes and do some more learning down here. It's really good, brother.
Awesome. Looking to see how that deal was structured. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.